Please join our YouTube community and subscribe today.
Zhang Yi paced back and forth in the living room with his mobile phone. The appearance of Xing Weinan must have some special meaning, rather than simply coming here to borrow supplies. Zhang Yi thought for a moment, and then replied to his last message. Fine, how are you doing? Ha ha ha, it really is you are still alive. Xing Weinan suddenly laughed. I didn't expect you to become so powerful. Well, but I'm not bad. Now I'm also the director of the largest eel factory in Tianhai City. How about it, old classmate? I'm not bad at it. After seeing what he said, Zhang Yi suddenly felt something was wrong. Isn't the largest iron and steel factory in Tianhai City Qingpu Iron and Steel Factory? Xing Weinan became the factory director there. His pupils shrank, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. Are you the boss of Qingpu Base now? After a while. Xing Weinan sent a message. It's too troublesome to type. You know my education level is not high. Let's chat by voice. After all. Xing Weinan's voice call request came over. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa, reached out, and pressed the green call button. Isn't the boss of the Qingpu base called Shing Tien? What? You changed your name? Xing Weinan laughed and said, I think the name Xing Weinan is not aggressive enough to intimidate people, so I changed it. Listen, isn't the name Shing Tien very prestigious? The comber of Zhang Yi's mouth curled into a smile. A person who gains self-confidence by changing his name often only shows that he is very unconfident in his heart. According to the information obtained by Zhang Yi, Xing Tien has very powerful abilities, which is the basis for his success in seizing power. Tell me, you suddenly contacted me. What do you want to talk about? Xing Tien chuckled. I wanted to catch up with you. You see, I didn't do very well in school at that time. Unlike you, I was handsome, popular with girls, and my academic performance was also good. Speaking of this, he let out a long sigh and said with emotion, Hey, who would have thought that I would have such a great day? Are you right, old classmate? Zhang Yi smiled, not caring about Xing Tian's attitude. He just said to Xing Tien, We can talk about the past slowly in the future. You must not find me today to reminisce, right? I'm quite curious, so why don't you just tell me what your purpose is? Okay then, let's talk about business. Xing Yilan picked his ears, and his tone became serious. Zhang, didn't you kill the people from Yangsheng base and Chaoyu base before? Now they have decided to get you. And it wasn't the two of them who did it. To be on the safe side, they called me and the snow worshippers. Hey, if the four of us attack you together, I'm afraid you will suffer old crimes. A sharp light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. 4 families? If that's the case, the pressure they need to face will double. So you came to me this time to declare war? Xing Tien sneered. Old classmate, what age is this? How can there be any talk of declaring war? If I really want to go with them to beat you, I will definitely catch you by surprise. I'm looking for you this time. Firstly, I want to catch up with you, and second, I want to talk to you about my past relationship. Zhang Yi, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about it. Xing Tian's thoughts were interrupted. By Zhang Yi, he said, Our youth base has no grievances with you. I don't need to fight this battle, but you must give sufficient conditions. Xing Yilan said, I want 1,000 kilograms of food. If you want us not to join this war, you must at least produce this much food. 10,000 kilograms is 10 tons of food. Wouldn't he think that 10 tons is a lot? It's not that Zhang looks down on him, but in his warehouse. There are more than 10 tons of food on just a few shelves. Zhang Yi said, Let me think about this matter again, after all. You want too much food? You have to give me some time. Xing Yilan said, Okay, well, I will give you a day to think about it, no more. Give me an answer before noon tomorrow. He took a deep breath. Old classmate, you'd better agree. Otherwise, I really don't want to meet you on the battlefield. I understand, so let's say that first. Zhang Yi and Xing Tien ended the call. Zhang Yi slowly put his hands behind his head. 10 tons of food is not much to me. You can bring him the canned food from the Zishan base. Oh, that's right. There's also the pile of canned food that Wang Ximing didn't finish eating in the warehouse before. That thing weighs the mo, and there's a lot of soup in it. It's not difficult at all to make 10 tons. But can you trust him? The material problem is easy for Zhang Yi to solve. He didn't even need to touch the good stuff in his own warehouse. These 4 families don't have people like Chen Xinian, and they can't produce large-scale ground-penetrating missiles, and they can't destroy the 3-story underground space at the core of the shelter. Be prepared for the worst, and then fight the fiercest battle. Only by deterring all the forces in Tianhai City can we exchange for peace. Zhang Yi immediately called everyone over. Meeting. He explained the basic situation to everyone. Yang Xin said calmly, I don't think the situation is as bad as imagined. These 4 major forces seem to be working together, but in fact they are also wary of each other. There are only 2 bases that have conflicts with us, Yangsheng and Zhaoyu. The snow-worshipping and Qingpu bases were both recruited by them. Uncle Yu crossed his arms and said, Our biggest weakness is that we have too few people. If there are too many opponents, we will have a great disadvantage in dividing our troops. Zhang Yi said, you can rely on the defense line to fight the first wave. He looked out the window. The area around the shelter is not empty. There are 2 low mountains behind it, forming a natural barrier. Coupled with the heavy snow and slippery roads, it is impossible for them to rush down from the mountains to attack. So the main thing to face is the enemy in the front. About a 120-degree wide angle, Zhang Yi knocked on the table and drew an arc with his finger dipped in water. And our firepower distribution is mainly in this area. As I said, our goal is not to defeat them, but to repel them. Let them recognize that we have the strength to dominate one side. Zhang Yi smiled and said, after the fight I will negotiate with them to turn the area around the shelter into a restricted area and not allow them to enter. But even facing 3 attacks at the same time, the pressure is still not small. It felt like our first line of defense was going to be breached very quickly, and we had to fall back into the shelter to defend. The problem now is that our strongest defense is the shelter itself, and the second is your dimensional gate, boss. However, there are so many people from the 3 opposing forces attacking at the same time, and there are various means of attack. What if they have the means to break through the shelter? Fatty Shu spread his hands. After all, the Yangsheng base holds a large amount of fuel resources. They can use many large-scale equipment, and they also have the ability to transport the equipment. Zhang Yi heard these words. He just smiled lightly. You don't need to worry about these problems. If it really happens, I will solve it. While everyone was discussing, Hua Hua, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa next to Zhang Yi, suddenly raised her head vigilantly. Meow. This sound was full of vigilance. It seemed that something strange was approaching step by step from the snow. Let's go and see. They come to the window. Zhang Yi took out his binoculars and looked forward. Finally, he saw a figure in a gray robe in the wind and snow. It seems to be an old man in his dying years, walking towards this side step by step with difficulty. But no matter who it is impossible to treat him as an ordinary old man. Zhang Yi made a judgment. It's just that I don't know which force he came from and what purpose he came here with. At this moment, Zhang Yi heard Uncle Yu's surprised voice next to him. I recognize him. He is the snow worship cult Dafa I met in Yuelu community. Snow worship cult! Everyone couldn't help but recall the name. What are they sending people here for now? Zhou Kier said vigilantly. Zhang Yi's eyes were serious. As far as I know, the relationship between the snow worship sect and the other major forces in Timble City has always been at odds. If you want to disintegrate their alliance from within, then snow worship cult is the best breakthrough. But I also don't have any good feelings for this sect. Yang Xingxin smiled and said to Zhang Yi, but if they are useful, you can contact them. Zhang Yi patted the shoulder of Fatty Shu next to him. Fatly, go out and talk to him. Tum on the microphone, and I'll tell you how to talk to him. Fatty Shu was taken aback and begged for mercy. Boss, I'm the weakest of us. It's not right for me to go, right? Zhang Yi glanced at him. Your ability is the easiest to display in the ice and snow environment. Don't worry, with us here, we won't give him a chance to move you. As Zhang Yi spoke, he raised the golden sand eagle in his hand. Once he has any range movements, I will kill him in an instant. Seeing Zhang Yi's irresistible eyes, Fatly Shu had no choice but to put on a bitter face and, go out, don't let him get close to the defense line, lest he find our arrangement. Stop, don't come any closer, according to Zhang Yi's instructions. Fatty Shu stopped the big decree that he was about to approach. Defaling smiled slightly, bowed and said modestly, I am Zhao Lianhua, the Grand Decree of the Snow Sect. I am here to pay my respects to Mr. Zhang Yi according to the will of my lord. Zhang Yi frowned. Came here to find him? Uncle Yu reminded. This old man seems to be able to see through people's talents. He once approached me, but I rejected him. However, he helped Li Lian awaken his abilities. Zhang Yi nodded. This is indeed a very useful ability, especially when used with their leader Yuan Kongye's. It is a perfect match. He said to Fatty Shu, ask him what he wants to do when he sees me. Fatty Shu looked at the Dafa decree and said, our boss is not something you can see whenever you want. Just say what you have to say here, he can hear our conversation. Dafa Ling was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Zhang would be so stable that he wouldn't even give him a chance to meet. The Dafa said, I came here this time under the order of the leader, because I have a very important message to send to Mr. Zhang Yi. 3 days later, the 3 bases of Yangsheng, Zhaoyu, and Qingpu will join forces to attack your shelter. Dafa opened his arms excitedly and said, these brutal and shameless warlord villains are actually wanting to kill and trying to destroy such a beautiful homeland. They even want to confuse my lord and attack you together. I worship the snow-cut and have always served the gods devoutly, spreading love and peace to the world. Therefore, I am very resistant to their suggestions. So, Dafa Ling looked at the shelter with a gloomy gaze. We hope to cooperate with Mr. Zhang Yi. After listening to the words of the Dafa, The smile on the comber of Zhang Yi's mouth gradually changed. Here we come, it's exactly what we expected. The four major forces in Tianhai City are also intrigues with each other. How can there be any unity and cooperation at all? As long as the interests are in place, the backstab can be sold at any time. The more they split up, the greater Zhang Yi's confidence in winning the next battle. He gave Fatty Shu instructions, and Fatty Shu asked, "Oh, do you mean that you can withdraw from this operation and not join the attack on us?" Unexpectedly, Dafa shook his head. If it's just that, how can it be regarded as cooperation? The purpose of my worship of the Snow Sect is love and peace, and I will resolutely attack all evil forces. So the meaning of my family's leader is that I hope to cooperate with you to deal with the remaining forces. It is because of the Lord's guidance I see love and peace in you. Our snow cult has always been suppressed by several major forces, trying to survive in the cracks. So from this level, both of us are the same type of organization. We should unite to resist the hegemony of those Al-Qaeda organizations. Zhang Yi said to Fatty Shu, "Ask them, if they want to cooperate, what can they use to prove their sincerity? My lord knows that Mr. Zhang Yi is a cautious person. If you don't have enough sincerity, you won't be able to believe in the sincerity of our snow sect. So this time I came here. I brought you a sacred object of the snow worship cult. I think you will understand our sincerity." After the great decree was finished, he took out the small wooden box from his body and handed it to Fatty Shu. "This is the sacred object of the snow worship cult Ice Soul," said the decree. "Ice Soul?" Fatty Shu was afraid of danger, so he didn't dare to pick it up. Zhang Yi said, "Ask him, what is this thing for?" "The function of Ice Soul is very simple. It can help people to open up their spirits and become a different person. And for extraordinary being, it can deeply tap the potential and make them stronger. Mr. Zhang Yi, I think you have been in Tianhai City for so long, so it's impossible that you haven't heard anything about this mat." A strange color flashed in Zhang Ye's eyes. Zhang Yi never believed that there is a free lunch in the world. This kind of ability obtained by implanting some kind of object is absolutely abnormal. "Do you think I will believe your nonsense? This so-called Ice Soul is actually shady, right?" Fa Ling smiled and said, "Ice Soul is a sacred object, and there is absolutely no side effect. I can assure you of this, because you are not the first person to get it. Prior to this, the four major shelters in Tianhai City have asked us for it. Are you still unwilling to believe things that they have verified?" Zhang Yi was taken aback by this sentence. "What? Have all four bases been used?" Zhang Yi didn't know whether what the Dafa said was true or not, so he quickly asked Yang Xingxin next to him. Yang Xingxin took out the laptop from under the wheelchair and started investigating quickly. There are indeed records in this regard. Among the earliest batch of aliens in the Xishan base, 2 of them had the ability to awaken through the Ice Soul. It is precisely because of this implanted method of opening abilities that they study the matter of transforming people. Yang Xingxin's voice suddenly paused and she said in shock, "According to the report, from Xishan base, this kind of thing called Bing Po should be cells separated from the human body." Zhang Yi asked, "Does this kind of thing have any side effects?" Yang Xingxin replied, "According to the records, the 4 major bases have asked the Snow Worship Sect for Ice Souls to create aliens. They have conducted research on this kind of cells, and they don't contain any harmful substances, and they can't manipulate the implanters through the cells. And the reason why Snow Worship Cult can develop to its current scale is largely due to the living space obtained by using ice porridge. If what's recorded here is true, then Ice Soul is undoubtedly a good thing." Zhang Yi looked out the window and didn't speak for a long time. Good stuff? Can people become aliens without going through a near-death experience? Or can they inspire potentials in aliens? No, he didn't believe in such a good thing. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and asked cold, "Ask him, can this thing be used by ordinary people?" Dafa Decree gave his own answer. "Its effects will vary depending on the potential of the person. We have tried it before, and it will only have a weak effect when used on ordinary people. So it's best to use it on aliens." Fatty Shu asked, "Aren't you afraid that we will refuse to cooperate with Snow Worship Cult? I mean, are you giving too much?" There was a scheming smile on the corner of Dafa Ling's mouth. "In any case, the result of several major forces joining forces to attack you cannot be changed. Even if the 2 of us can't reach a cooperation, let you become stronger, and then kill more people from other forces, it will be a steady profit for us." Fatty Shu slandered inwardly. The old man is quite good at calculating. Zhang Yi then asked, "I can understand that you want to use us to weaken the power of several major bases, but what are you going to do with this cooperation?" Da Feiling bowed slightly, but a cold chill burst out from his cloudy eyes. "At that time, we will pretend to attack your shelter with them. Of course, we didn't work hard and feigned an attack nearby. And once they show their flaws..." Da Feiling suddenly smiled, like an old duck. "We will stab them hard in the back." After listening to the words of the Dafa, Zhang Yi cursed secretly in his heart. What a bunch of old bastards. I see. If what you give is really useful, then one will agree to your proposal. Da Faling smiled and said, I believe you will not be disappointed. By the way, since we have shown our sincerity, should Mr. Zhang Yi also express your sincerity? Zhang Yi sneered and asked, back. The most difficult battle is that we are fighting. What else do you want? Dafa quickly waved his hand. You misunderstood us. We don't need any supplies from you. We just hope that you can nod and allow the snow worship cult to preach in your territory after winning this battle. For the snow worship cult, it is our lifelong wish to allow more people to join in the glory of the snow god. Zhang Yi muttered to himself. Preaching? It really fits the style of a cult, isn't it just pulling people's heads? Zhang Yi said, as long as we can successfully repel the enemy, there is no problem with the conditions you proposed. Da Faling was very happy, and after saying some polite words, he returned happily. Nowadays, the Qingpu base remains neutral, and there is a chance that they will not make a move. The snow worship cult wants to cooperate with me and stab several other forces in the back. The situation is getting more and more interesting, Fatty Shu said. Boss, how do we deal with this thing? Fatty Shu was holding the small wooden box, feeling a little nervous. Zhang Yi said, don't worry, you come to the door. Zhang Yi directly put it into the different space. Even if it is a spy device or an explosive, it can be handled well in a different dimension. Zhang Yi opened the wooden box and found nothing unusual. He just saw 2 white spherical crystals exuding wisps of white chill and wriggling slightly from time to time. Is this ice soul? Zhang Yi looked at it and fell into thought. Could it be that Yuan Kongyi's ice soul is really a key to help people unlock abilities? After Zhang Yi talked to himself for a while, he suddenly couldn't help laughing. What a joke! I don't believe there is such a good thing in this world. If only people from the 4 major bases have used it. But the problem is that the big decree used it on Li Jie in the last days. Everyone is in danger, and everyone is thinking about how to make themselves stronger so that they can protect themselves. Who would be selfless enough to help others? With 2 ice caps, there is a chance to create 2 aliens. It was hard for him to be indifferent to such a big temptation. Just when Zhang Yi was thinking, several fiery eyes fell on him, feeling the change in the atmosphere around him. Zhang Yi raised his head involuntarily. He saw Zhou Qi, Yang Mi, and Lu Karen all looking at him expectantly. Yang Mi spoke first. Zhang Yi, those 2 ice souls, do you want to use them? He said indifferently, you have heard about this ice poker just now. It can help people awaken supernatural powers. The 4 major base organizations have used it before. So far, no side effects have been found. But I'm not sure about it. Never believed that there would be pie in the sky. Zhang Yi looked at them. You guys have to think about it carefully. I will use at most one of these 2 ice caps now. To put it bluntly, the first person to use it will act as a guinea pig. Whoever wants to use it, raise your hand. Hearing what Zhang Yi said, there was a hint of hesitation on the faces of several women. But Yang Mi still raised her hand decisively. I'd love to try it! Seeing Yang Mi raised her hand, Zhou Keir quickly raised her hand too, and Zhou Haimei, who was beside her, raised her hand weakly, frowning. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded and said to Yang Mi, your will is the strongest, so I decided to give you an ice cap. Yang Mi's eyes were full of surprises. She rushed over excitedly and hugged Zhang Yi's neck tightly. Great, thank you, Zhang Yi! Yang Mi's excited eyes were full of tears, and the branches of happiness lying on Zhang Yi's body trembled wildly. Zhang Yi, thank you for giving me such a good opportunity. Zhang Yi said softly. Fool, my love for you is as deep as the sea. Who else can I take care of if I don't take care of you? A devilish smile appeared on the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. Since it is an experiment, the one chosen must naturally be lost and insignificant existences. She can take the initiative to stand up, which saves me a lot of efforts. Okay, let's continue discussing the battle plan. My opinion is, forget for the time being that these 2 forces may become helpers. No one can be trusted, and there is a high possibility of temporary betrayal. Therefore, we still need to be prepared to face the forces from all directions. But if anything happens to the scene, then... He folded his hands and said faintly, let our shelter become a hell for them to bury. For the sake of safety, Zhang Yi specially found a strong room, and then tied Yang Mi to the bed with a restraint belt. Yang Mi's expression was both expectant and nervous, and her body was trembling slightly with excitement. Zhang Wei was wearing gloves, picked up an ice cap with a pair of tweezers, and slowly placed it on Yang Mi's forehead. The ice poker landed on her forehead and touched her skin. Suddenly, extremely slender lines protruded from the small fleshy ball, sticking to her head like many tentacles. This cell can be perfectly integrated with the human body, and Yang Mi's eyes became hollow, and her eyes lost focus. A tired look appeared in Yang Mi's eyes, and soon fell into a deep sleep. Zhang Yi called Zhou Keir aside. Keir, you are in charge of watching Yang Mi. In order to prevent her from acting strange, inject her with a certain dose of muscle relaxants and tranquilizers. Chukir nodded. Well, I'll get the medicine right away. Her small mouth was po-ed, as if she could hang a soy sauce bottle. She looked a little jealous and dissatisfied. Zhang Yi took Zhou Qir's hand and stretched out his hand to rub her tender face gently. Fool, do you really think that I didn't let you use Ice Cube because I cared more about her? On the contrary, I was afraid that Ice Cube would have side effects, so I didn't use it for you. Don't you understand my painstaking efforts? Zhou Qir looked at Zhang Yi in surprise. So, do you think so? Zhang Yi pulled her with a smile and said, Never trust what strangers give you. Any negligence in the last days may kill you. Qir, you are a very important doctor in our team. With this ability, you are even more important than other people. But Yang Mi is different. She has to go all out to prove her worth. After listening to Zhang Yi's explanation, Zhou Qir understood his painstaking efforts. Zhang Yi suppressed the smile on his face after she left and went back to the bedroom silently. Zhang Yi picked up his cell phone. Hey, Zhang Yi, have you figured it out? Zhang Yi nodded. I figured it out, we can cooperate, but I want to change the method of cooperation. A look of curiosity flashed in Shing Tien's eyes. Oh, how do you want to cooperate? Zhang Yi. According to the amount of food you said, I will give you twice as much. But you have to come to this battle. Xing Lian sneered and said, You want me to help you? That's absolutely impossible. The Qingpu base has never provoked disputes. I don't want to fight with you, let alone offend the other three forces at the same time. Zhang Yi shook his head. No, I don't need you to fight anyone. I just need you to bring someone over and pretend to be attacking. Xing Lian looked suspicious. Let me take someone there to act? Zhang Yi, what kind of medicine is sold in your gourd? Zhang Yi smiled and said, You don't have to worry about what I want to do. There is no conflict of interest between us, let alone any grievances. As long as you bring someone over to perform a play, I can give you double portions of food. Do you want to take this job or not? Xing Tian's eyes flickered. There was no reason not to accept such a good thing, but he couldn't figure out Zhang Yi's purpose. He said with a hearty smile, Ha 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 ha! Good! Have no reason not to agree to such a good thing, but before that you have to bring the food first to show your sincerity. Zhang Yi said, I will give you 1/3 as a deposit first. I will give you the rest after the matter is completed. Xing Lian thought for a while and felt that it made sense. Well, at Oro 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, we will trade at the original site of Jishan base. Okay, it's a deal. The two ended the call, and the plan in Zhang Yi's heart was almost formed. In this battle, the ideal state is exactly what he expected. But even if faced with the worst situation, Zhang Yi would not be surprised if Qingpu base and Snow Worship sect turned against the water and joined forces with Yangsheng base and Chaoyu base to attack the sanctuary. At worst, I just abandon the 2-story building on the surface and enter the underground with stronger defense. This is the worst result. In the middle of the night, Zhang's door was suddenly knocked hastily. Zhang Yi, Yang Mi has changed. Outside the door was Zhou Qir's anxious voice. Zhang Yi suddenly got up from the bed. Let's go and have a look. Zhang Yi brought Hua Hua to this room. But at this time, the abnormal sweating and flushing on Yang Mi's body had faded away. She was lying on the bed, panting, unable to move her body due to the injection of drugs. When she saw Zhang Yi coming, she forced a happy smile. Zhang Yi, I succeeded. Hua Hua was telling Zhang Yi that there was nothing wrong with Yang Mi in front of him, and she was still the woman he was familiar with from head to toe. Could it be that I am worrying too much? Even the 4 major bases have verified that there is no problem with the ice apparatus. Does it really have no side effects? Zhang Yi asked, How do you feel now? What kind of ability have you awakened? Yang Mi closed her eyes to experience her abilities. She suddenly smiled and said, As expected, I only have to do housework at Homer. She didn't see any disappointment on her face. Yang Mi introduced to Zhang Yi. My ability is feast, and the food I make can help others recover their consumed abilities. She smiled and said, Sure enough, it's an auxiliary ability. That's fine. I'm not very good at fighting. Zhang Yi's expression relaxed and smiled lightly. It is indeed a very useful ability, so that when we are fighting, we don't need to worry about the excessive consumption of abilities. He looked at Zhou Qir and said, Qir, help her untie the restraint belt. Zhou Qir's eyes were full of envy, and she walked over to help Yang Mi untie the restraint belt. When you recover tomorrow, show everyone your ability, Zhang Yi said with a smile. Okay, all right. The big decree is right. The effect of this thing still depends on the potential of the individual. Yang Mi's potential is only so great, and even the awakening ability is only auxiliary. It feels somewhat similar to Li Jian. The time came to the second day. In the morning, Zhang Yi called Shing Tien. Come here now. The trading location has changed. It's in Sujia Town, Lujiang District. After hearing this, Shing Tien frowned and said, Your territory? Zhang Yi smiled and said, Now I am going to be surrounded and attacked. Not you. It is not a big mistake for me to be careful. You will never suspect that I have ulterior motives for you? Shing Tien snorted coldly. Okay, then it's up to you. It's in Zujia town. Zhang Yi called Uncle Yu and Fatty Shu with Hua Hua, ready to go out. As for Liang Yue, she is still immersed in her own world and has not escaped. Shing Tien had brought dozens of people to Sujia town. As Zhang Yi expect, their means of transportation were relatively simple. It turned out to be all dog sleds. However, the dogs they raise are large in size. And no matter who it is impossible to ignore the giant silver-gray dog that is as big as a house at the front of the dog group. After Hua Hua appeared, the magic dog and Hua Hua quickly stared at each other and let out dangerous whimpers. Zhou Lingling, the girl on the back of the magic dog, quickly touched its head. Lele, be good, don't whine. Ha ha ha, long time no see, old classmate. Xing Yilan suddenly laughed. Unexpectedly, we haven't seen each other for more than 10 years, and we meet again in this kind of environment. Zhang Yi also said with a smile, Yeah, I thought, how could I have a good drink at a class reunion? But judging by your current appearance, you are doing very well. You have already become a big shot in Tianhai City. Xing Lianchang sighed. Who would have imagined that I, who was insignificant in school back then, would have today? According to the agreement between the two parties, Zhang Yi took out 1/3 of the food and handed it over to Xing Tien as a deposit. Xing Yilan brought enough people and enough sleds to pull all the food back. Looking at the food he got without a single soldier death, Xing Tien was very happy. Zhang, don't feel bad about these foods. It's definitely worth it to cooperate with our green baser, Xing Lian said to Zhang, with a smile. The comers of Zhang Yi's mouth curled up slightly. He squinted his eyes and said this to Xing Tien. I don't know if you still remember when I was in junior high school I fought with a few people from the next class. Xing Yian recalled it for a while, nodded and said, There is indeed such a thing. It seems that some gangsters from the next class chased Fan Xingcan from our class, but Fan Xingcan has always had a crush on you. Zhang Yi said, Back then, one of the 5 of them beat me. I knew I couldn't beat them, so I caught that kid calling people and knocked out 3 of his teeth. Zhang Yi stretched out his index finger and pointed at Xing Tien. His gaze gradually became fierce. I gave you food this time. I hope you can abide by our agreement. But if you betray me, even if you all come to attack at that time, I would rather ignore the other families and drag you into the water with all my might.
Hey there! This concludes the explanation up to the latest chapter release. Stay tuned for the next chapter breakdown as soon as it's available.